It's teachbetter.com/presentation-files. So that is going to have this presentation in it. It is also going to have a bunch of supporting documents, links, the course. There's a free online course, templates, and things like that. So in worst case scenario, you can follow along or look at things that way. There is a slide share presentation in that shared link as well. So let me see. It's a bit outdated, but it'll serve our purposes if we need it to.
Hey, Ariel.
Yeah.
I just wondered if we created real quickly sorry, Google was helping me. I wonder if we created a shared document like we have in our other sessions, and we can throw that link in there so people can add notes and stuff.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. Thanks for reminding me.
Those of you that want to have fun on a Sunday, this is another Snapchat filter from my desktop that I'm just loving. Leslie Fisher tweeted it out today, and I'm just like, I'm learning, but I'm also having a little bit of fun.
Good. I think as teachers, we need to be having fun right now. We've been through
glasses, not sunglasses.
We've absolutely been through the ringer for sure. So, does everyone have the link that I just shared? Like, can you access it? Okay. Oh, it says, someone's telling me to check my system display settings. What would I have to change in my system display settings, do you think? Yeah, I don't think there's anything. So I put a link to everybody in the, let's try this one more time, and then otherwise we can kind of just work with what we have, if that's fair. I just don't want to waste your guys' time with tech issues though the entire time. Yeah, I'm not seeing. So let's let me try sharing another program that is not. Try sharing Chrome and see if that works. Can you guys see this?
No.
So well, that tells me that it's not it's like a Mac issue working with, you know what I'm saying? Like there's like another issue here that's just not gonna let me share anything on my screen apparently. I will act out each Joshua. I actually love this idea. So I want you to picture a green slide. There's a title and I'm just joking. Regardless of if I have slides or not, you all have access to those slides. It's at teachbetter.com/presentation-files. If you want to go there, there's also going to be some references, documents, examples, and things like that. So using the there's a hand raise feature here, right? Can we use that? Is that so? Like, how many people here know about the grid method already, or are you guys just, I have no idea what this is or who you are? Can I just get some sort of either head nods or thumbs up, thumbs down, or digital hand raises would be good too. Thumbs down. I have one thumbs down. I have no idea who you are or what you're talking about. That's fine. Any other thumbs down, thumbs ups? Anyone? Anyone? No? All right then. So the grid method is essentially a way to allow students to work self-paced through in your classroom, and that's through the development of mastery grids. If you'd like to download a mastery grid, there's one at teachbetter.com/presentation-files. You can actually download an example or a copy of one right there. If you would like, I can actually put a link to an example in the chat so you guys can reference what I'm talking about as well. So give me 1 minute. So here's the presentation in a PDF. If that's helpful to anyone. And then here is, I apologize for the technical issues, guys. I usually have better luck with these things. And then I'm going to put the grid example. I'm going to pull a middle school science example. There are some other examples on there, but that's what we'll use now. I appreciate that, Josh. Thank you very much. And here's an example mastery grid. So that last link that I just put onto the chat is an example mastery grid. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the grid and kind of break it down. So does everyone see the link that I just put on there? Is everyone able to open that? So if you open up that document, there's the left-hand side of the grid, which are kind of grayed out boxes. Those are going to be learning targets, right? And then there's a body of the grid that is made up of learning opportunities for your students. So the left-hand side of the grid are tiered targets based on DOK. So how familiar are you guys with DOK? Can I get like a thumbs up, thumbs down? You guys feeling okay with DOK? Very good. That's awesome. Every district's different. So sometimes I talk to districts or schools and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Others have been using it for years. So the grid scaffolds using DOK. So the left-hand side of that grid is actually going to be your learning targets, right? So the first row on that grid is going to be aligned to the first learning target or targets listed there. And those are going to be at DOK level 1. The second level is going to be DOK level 2, level 3, and level 4. Is everyone with me so far? So level 1 is going to be basic recall, things like that. Level 2 is going to be application of skills or concepts. Level 3 is going to be comparing, contrasting, forming arguments, just your standard DOK level types of things. And level 4 is going to be higher level application. Now, I'm hoping everyone's noticing that there are 5 levels on the grid, and there are only 4 levels of DOK. I promise I fully understand that there are only 4 levels of DOK. However, how many of you have been in a class? Well, you were in a classroom before COVID-19 like shut down the world. But like, how many of you have ever been in your classroom and you're handing out papers or something, and you start with, you know, the first kid in the first row, and by the time you get to the back of the class, that student's like, hey, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. Who's ever experienced that before? And then you kind of sit there and you go, you know, I'm sorry, I thought this was going to take like 20 minutes and you finished it in 5. So could you just hold on for a second, right? Has anyone ever experienced this before? I see this in classrooms all the time. Well, here's the issue. That student, if you say, hold on, just wait, it's going to be 10 minutes, it's going to be 5 minutes, it's going to be 15 minutes, it can absolutely, it can be detrimental to the success of that student if that's happening often enough, right? So when we grow schools, so I work with schools and districts across the country. When we grow schools, one of the places we grow them the most is their gifted and advanced population. Now, we also grow their lowest population too. But that's where all of our energy goes as teachers anyway, right? If you go to any school, we put so many resources to the bottom 15% of our students. But if you look, the top 10% of our students are usually the ones that are flatlining and stagnating, right? So when we increase state report card scores, when we increase test data, we're helping the bottom 10%, but we're also helping the top 10% too. And that's really when we get this huge rightward shift and this increase in student success, because now those students that are the most advanced are not flatlining. They're actually able to progress and work through the content at their own pace. So there is this level 5, right? Level 5 is it's actually called an independent, sort of like an independent study or extended learning opportunity. So this is where if a student's already mastered the standard, and let's say they finish the grid, because let's be honest, students work through this at their own pace. So maybe a student finishes level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Maybe they finish it faster than everyone else in the classroom, okay? Well, now they can do an independent study or an extended learning opportunity where they pick something that was really interesting to them about that topic, and they dig a little bit deeper. So I've had students do amazing things. For the example you're looking at, for this moon example, I had a student ask me, and this is now like 5, 6 years ago now, but the student goes, "Hey, can we live on the moon?" I was like, "I don't know. Let's find out." So the student spent like 3, 4 days researching what would look like, researching like, could humans survive on the moon, how to build a habitat for them to do that. And then the student 3D printed the habitat and brought it to my classroom. So it's a really great opportunity for students to extend beyond sort of like the rote curriculum and dig deeper into things that interest them with those connections. So just to review, on the left-hand side of the grid, there are tiered targets based on DOK. Does everyone see where those are? Just little head nods since we're in digital mode. Thank you. And the body of the grid are the actual learning opportunities. Now, here's kind of the cool thing. The body of the grid, if you look at all of the activities that are next to the level 1 targets, those activities align to that target or those targets. So anything to the right of that first row, okay, is going to align. So when a student's completed all of those learning opportunities, they have then mastered those stated objectives. Does that make sense? Yes? Good. So, so someone just asked, how do I access the grid? So I'm going to, there was can someone repost the link? I'll do it real quick. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thanks, Josh. You got my back today. I appreciate that. So that's essentially how the grid's laid out. You have your tiered targets, and then you have your rows of activities or learning opportunities that align to those targets. Does that general idea make sense to everybody in terms of what you're looking at when you look at this grid? So now let's talk about, how does a grid get created, okay? Now I'm gonna be very clear. I usually spend like, a 6 to 12-hour workshop working with teachers on making a grid. So I'm not expecting after 15 minutes that you guys are gonna go, sweet, amazing, like I can do this. Maybe you can, and that's awesome, but like, don't feel like overwhelmed if this seems like a lot. Is that fair? I just don't want anyone, and you can always email me as well. So you're gonna start with your state standards. So I always have teachers visit your state standards, see what they're asking for. Usually that's going to be at DOK level 2 or 3. And one of the most common planning mistakes I see teachers make is that they spend all of their time in the classroom focused on DOK levels 1, maybe getting to 2. And then the students take the test at the end of the year and it's all DOK level 2 and 3. And then you have these students that have A's in all their classes, but aren't mastering the material at the level of the written standard. So you have this huge disconnect between what the students are doing in the classroom versus how they're being assessed sort of at the end of the year and things like that. So what we want to do is we want to scaffold and build up. So we want to look at the level of the standard, and then we want to break that standard down into tiered learning targets. So you're going to basically scaffold your standards or your targets to meet the need of the stated standard. So does that make sense so far? So that's sort of like step 1, is like you take your standard and you break it down into student-friendly learning targets, okay? And then once you have your learning targets, you are then going to develop your what we call mastery questions, okay? Now what mastery questions are what does a student have to do, or how can I assess that a student actually understands or knows this target? Okay. Has anyone ever heard of backwards design or understanding by design? So if you look, there is a flow, and I really wish I had my slide presentation right now, but there's a flow in the slide deck, and it actually goes from standard all the way down to the grid. So we have our targets. Sorry, Jim was, click share, highlight the desired screen, click share blue button if you have the opportunity to try. Checked with a Mac user, doesn't seem any different. Yeah, that's kind of what I did. Let's see if I can. I'm sorry, guys. I was just trying to like fix this real quick. Please bear with me. Advanced sharing options. Let's look at this. Who can share? Only host. Let's go to all participants. Who can share when someone else is sharing? Let's do that to all participants. I wonder if this will work. Hold on. I'm going to try something. We're going to see if this works. Maybe. People are. Oh, now I don't have. So anyway, I'll continue talking as I work through this. I apologize. So, as you get into the planning process, you're going to have your mastery questions. So your mastery questions are what the student has to do to meet the needs of the individual learning targets. And once you have those, now is when you can say, hey, I have these objectives, I have these targets. What do my students need to do in the classroom, or what learning opportunities do I need to provide so they can meet the needs of the stated questions, the targets, and the standards. Now let's try this. Can any of you guys? Nope, still no, huh? I thought it was going to work now. I clicked a couple things and filled in a couple boxes, and I was excited. And now I'm sadly disappointed.
I'm
Okay.
gonna try to share from my screen, and
Okay.
see if that works. So can you guys see my screen?
Yeah. So maybe we can do it this way. That's fine. So if you want to go to the just the slide share presentation at the bottom of this, or the PDF, either one. If you just scroll down on this. Oh, sorry. Presentation dash files. And if you just scroll down.
This one.
Yeah. Yep. And then if you want to scroll down to, like, there's a bunch of colored boxes. There's an adorable picture of my daughter if anyone wants to see her. You guys missed all that good stuff. I apologize. So, yeah, okay. So let's go up to the grid again real quick. If you could scroll up. I just want to make sure, does everyone understand like how the grid's laid out? So you have your left hand, your learning targets, and on the right. So this is a unit of study. Okay, so this is pre-test to post-test. So this isn't a single day or like 3 days or something. This could be an entire unit. That unit might last a week, it might last 2 weeks, it might last 3 weeks, okay? But this is like an example of a grid. So then if we scroll down to the flow chart that I was just referencing. So hopefully this makes it a little bit easier to see where I was going. So you're going to start with your standard, develop your targets, develop your mastery questions. Then you are going to develop your learning opportunities and your assessments that align. Once you have all these pieces, you can then develop your grid in a sequential order that makes sense in terms of management for your students. So the biggest takeaway I want you guys to have is, from standard all the way to grid, you have this cohesive connection. You guys see that? So where no matter what a student's doing in the classroom, it aligns all the way back to the standard. And no matter what question or activity that they're doing, you have this cohesive alignment. Now, one of the cool things about this is that with this single document, you can actually talk to multiple stakeholders at the exact same time. So every student has a grid in their hands. Okay, so the student knows what learning target they're working towards, they know what they're supposed to be doing, and they know what's up next. Okay, I've literally seen this work in a 3rd grade classroom. You can ask any kid what they're doing, what they're working on next, and every kid knows because this has been explicitly explained to them. Okay, now let's say the teacher is planning. So now the teacher knows exactly what who needs what, because students are working through this at their own pace. Now, if a principal wants to know what you're doing for this unit or for this week, you can give this document to your principal and say, these are my learning targets, this is what my students are doing, this is how they're being assessed. If a curriculum director or a superintendent says, hey, what, you know, how are you covering your curriculum? How are you assessing and things like that? This is a cohesive document that can then explain very strategically, you know, this alignment all the way back to the standards, to the targets, and what the students are doing on a daily basis in your classroom. Does that alignment kind of conversation make sense to you guys? Yes, you guys feeling okay about that? So that's one of the most powerful pieces of this, I think, is that you can create these grids that have these aligned pieces, and then students can work through them at their own pace, which we're going to get to in just a second. So can I get like a thumbs up from anyone who just feels good about the process and what a grid is? You guys feeling okay with that? Okay.
Hey, Ariel, is this what you're using that you talked about in your session?
Yes, this is what I use. And he said, like, for third grade, I've used it in first grade, and mine just looks a little bit more picture style, and that's very text heavy. So that's really the only difference.
Yeah, so I should have prefaced with that. I apologize. I've seen this work K through 12. So I've had kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade teachers use it, but I've also had high school teachers use it really, really effectively. So you are going to have to, as Ariel mentioned, you do have to obviously edit and make those adjustments for your students. If you have non-readers, putting a bunch of words on a grid doesn't help anyone. If you, but this is a middle school example. There's a picture elementary example on the files that I shared. There is also a social studies example, a math example, and an ELA example, if anyone would like to see those. So could we scroll to the next slide, please? So one of the things, so once you have your grid made, okay, you're going to formatively assess after every single learning opportunity, so that when a student is finished working or finished with whatever activity that they're currently on in the grid. So if a student's working on 1B on the grid, okay, and they finish that activity, they're going to have some sort of check before they can move on to the next activity, okay? So this is what we call formative assessment. So you want to maintain an expectation of at least 80% or higher. That means the student has to show a basic level or readiness to do the next task before moving on. You can also provide targeted, purposeful feedback and intervention, and you want to give students multiple attempts to show mastery. FAIL, F-A-I-L, stands for first attempt in learning in a grid method classroom. First attempt in learning, F-A-I-L. How many of you guys have ever been in your classroom and you're handing out an assignment and you get that one kid that's like maybe not very motivated, and they're just like, I'm not doing this. I'm not working today. Who's ever felt that, right? It's a horrible feeling. But a lot of times it's because students are afraid to fail. And what this can do is it can actually remove that fear for students, so that they realize that their first attempt, it's okay if they don't mess up, because they're going to get another opportunity to show mastery. And here's another misconception. A lot of people think, well, if they know they get all these attempts, that means they're going to just, you know, like rush through it. But here's the catch. In most scenarios, and I'm not saying this is 100% of the time, when I talk to teachers, students are trying harder the first time than they ever have before in their grid method classrooms. And here's why. In a traditional system, if a student turns in an F or turns in bad work, they just get more work the next day, right? Like we create this cycle of failure for them where they go, here's your work, here's your F, here's another work to fail, here's more. You just see, like, it's like this vicious cycle for students. And if we remove that cycle and go, well, hold on, you didn't show me you understand this yet, so you need to show that you understand this before. We've now made failure harder than success. We've made failure a much more difficult process. In the traditional system, they just give me my F. Give me something else to fail tomorrow, right? Where if you rephrase that and failure is the first opportunity, you can really change the way students perceive, failure, and they're going to try harder the first time. You guys should integrate technology when possible, and absolutely differentiate based on need, okay? So if a student can't, is a poor writer, maybe they can verbally explain it. Because when we're talking about mastery learning, which is what all of this is, when we're talking about mastery learning, this is truly a focus on knowledge over task, okay? So this is a huge like star that I want you to make in your notes or anything like that, and that is mastery focuses on the mastery of content and knowledge over the completion of a task. So if you ask a student to explain the first few steps of photosynthesis, and they can't write it, maybe they can draw a diagram, maybe they can explain it, maybe they can do it in some other way. We want to give students multiple ways to demonstrate mastery and show understanding. Could you please scroll up again? So I also want to talk about formative assessment. Do you only differentiate within one grid for a unit, or have you also differentiated by, sorry, there's a question. I should preface why I'm mumbling to myself. So Caitlin had a question. She said, do you only differentiate with one grid for a unit, or have you also differentiated by having more than one grid for a unit within a classroom? So this is an awesome question. Thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate that. So one of the coolest things that the grid does, how many of you guys have ever seen an IEP? Most of you, actually everyone raise your hand because you're legally obligated to do that. So I think everyone has to do that anyway. You don't really have a choice. And then on that IEP, there's an accommodation section, right? Every student has them with an IEP. There's an accommodation section. Every single person watching this chat right now, all 26 or 27 of you have seen an IEP. Well, on that IEP, there's a list of accommodations, and there's one accommodation that has shown up on more IEPs than I have ever seen in the history of education, okay? Every IEP I have ever seen has a single accommodation, and it doesn't even matter which student it is. You're literally, it's like the number one thing on almost every single accommodation, and that one thing is always extended time. Just shake your head if you agree with me. Who's ever seen extended time on an IEP? It's on every single IEP that I've ever seen. What this does, what the grid method actually does, is it provides extended time as a tier 1 intervention for every single student in your classroom, so that every single student can get more time if they need it, or less time if they can work quicker than other students. So this is taking what we normally reserve for IEP students or tier 2 intervention. You guys familiar with RTI when I say tiers and stuff? Is that, I was just making sure. Sometimes I get weird stares because different states have different, lingo. So this is providing PACE as a tier 1 intervention so that every single student's getting PACE as so now when we get to tier 2, we can deal with things like the student's dyslexic, or they have poor number sense, or they have other gaps from previous years. So this is truly, by providing PACE as a tier 1 intervention, allowing you to further differentiate in your classroom than you ever have before. So back to your question. That was a really long explanation for your question, but it was for a reason. So the grid builds in universal design. It's designed to meet the needs of all students. It also builds in differentiation based on pace and mastery. So every student's going to be working in that zone of proximal development, which is going to be more differentiated than a traditional classroom already. However, I have had a lot of teachers, if you have really low students or really high students, make separate grids for those individual students. So if you have a student that's severely behind or needs to close like additional gaps, I've had teachers work with intervention specialists and design separate grids within the context of a classroom for students. Now, on the other side, I was working with a teacher in Illinois, and that teacher had 2 students in her class, her 8th grade math class, who were taking high school math credit inside an 8th grade classroom because grids were developed for them to complete inside of the 8th grade classroom. So they had actually finished the 8th grade math curriculum halfway through the year and started getting high school credit. The board had to approve it, and it was like this big whole thing. But it also works on the other end. So you can create and differentiate grids within the same classroom based on student need. Does that answer your question? Hopefully, whoever asked that question, Caitlin, I think. Okay. Keplinger. Any other questions before we move on? That's absolutely fine if there are. Not everyone at once, guys. Calm down. Okay, so I was just trying to. So that's how you differentiate within a grid. So let's talk about summative assessment. So we have this grid, and students in the class are working through the grid at their own pace. So you have some students ahead, some students behind. You're pulling small groups for intervention on a daily basis, hopefully based on where they're at. You're tracking progress, which we're going to talk about in a second. How many of you guys like to use projects or PBLs? Anyone? Like, yes? Okay. I'm going to assume a bunch of people are raising your hand because I see like 5 people, but I think there's more people in here. I apologize. So, so let's say you all want to do projects. Who's ever done a project and you put all this time and you do all this effort, and then you get to the end of the project and you get to the big presentation and you have a student sit there and go, this is my project on what's that word? What is it? Photosynthesis. And you have this horrible moment where they've spent all this time doing all this work and you realize they have learned nothing. It is the worst feeling as a teacher I ever had myself. And it was like an awful feeling to have. Well, if you look back at that grid, what if you take that same project and you put it into a grid where every step of the project is a box? So now students aren't getting to present, they're not getting to the end of the project until they've actually demonstrated that they're learning along the way, which, by the way, if you do PBL correctly, is how it's supposed to work anyway, okay? So PBL projects, problem-based units, things like that fit amazingly well. We've worked with several STEM schools, PBL schools that use this as their primary model, and the grid flows and works really well. You can also use traditional assessments, okay? So a lot of teachers think if they're all working at their own pace, how do I do my unit or chapter test? Now I'm going to ask a simple question I want you to think about, and that is, how many grades go into the grade book when you give an assessment? I want you to just think about that real quick. How many grades go into your grade book when you give a unit or chapter test? Now, most of you probably are thinking 1. Is that basically correct? You put 1 grade for 1 assessment. That's pretty normal, I would imagine. With that in mind, did that assessment only cover 1 objective or 1 standard? And if I look at the grade of that assessment and I got an 86, did I get an 86 on which standard, which objective? If you've already done the work to make a grid and you've developed these learning targets and objectives and aligned assessments and mastery questions, what I tell teachers is take all that work and put it into your unit assessment and create sections for your test. So the first section of your test is your level 1 targets. Your second section of your test is your level 2 targets, and your third section of the test is your level 3 targets. Now, when the student takes the test, maybe they get an 86%, but when you get that test back, you can go, well, they have a 99% on level 1, a 92% on level 2, and maybe a 65% on level 3, which then identifies the gap or where they have a lack of understanding. Does that make sense? So with that in mind, you can take the exact same assessment you have right now, break it into sections, and that's a great way to start shifting towards objective, target, or standards-based grading. Now, I know I just said standards-based grading. Are you guys a standards-based district/school at all? Yes, no, working towards it, maybe? Okay, this is sort of like the thing that I get most of the time, and like, yeah, we talk about it a lot. Like, that's kind of like where it can end up going. So if you're looking to kind of start transitioning into that, which you should, honestly, next 5-10 years, it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. So you really don't have a choice. It's just if you want to get there sooner, that's probably a good idea. So a grade should represent mastery of content. It should represent nothing else. It shouldn't represent if they brought in tissue boxes. It shouldn't represent if you like the student, if they show up on time, if they have really creative work. Like, grade should represent mastery of the content. And this is a great way to kind of start inching your way towards those goals. You can also do performance-based assessment where students are demonstrating that they understand something with maybe a teacher-student conference. Maybe they're demonstrating how a lab works or something like that in a science class. Anything like that is absolutely possible. So could we scroll to the next? Now I'm not going to pretend, nor have I said, that if you put things in squares on a piece of paper and give it to your students, that your whole class magically transforms and manages itself. That's not true in any way, shape, or form. And I'm pretty sure that you guys would just kick me out of the Zoom chat if I said that. I'm going to get to the whole class teaching in just a sec. So thank you for that question, Jenica. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. But there are pieces that you have to put into place to help manage this in your classroom. First, I want to address Jenica's question. So Jenica Stock asks, do you do any whole class teaching with the grid? Yes, absolutely. Okay. So even though that your grid is self-paced, that does not mean you're not like allowed to talk to your class. I have a ton of teachers that split it up like 10 to 15 minutes of whole class instruction, and then students go into groups or stations or work time where they're on their grid. So I have a lot of teachers that break it up almost every single day. They're doing some whole class instruction. I have other teachers that have like whole class instruction days. So maybe Monday is like your notes or front loading day, and then Tuesday, Wednesday are grid days or self-pacing days, and then they come back on Thursday and do another note day, and then kind of move on like that. So I have teachers that do a lot of different things with whole class instruction. Here's another thing. If I have any science teachers or teachers that do demonstrations or plays or anything like that in their classrooms, it is really easy to do that with the grid. You do it on a day and you say, hey, everybody, we're not doing grid today. We're going to do X, Y, Z instead. Maybe that's do an experiment. Maybe that's do a lesson. Maybe that's do an activity. When I have my students do this experiment, I'm going to go back to the science class example. I'm going to say, take your observations, take your data, and when you get to it on the grid, I want you to draw your conclusions. I want you to summarize your results and your data, and I want you to graph and report on your findings. So I'm going to assess your understanding of this experience that we had as a whole class when you get to it on the grid. But you're going to go through the experience because I'm not setting up a lab 15 times as a whole class. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes? Okay. So absolutely, you can do whole class teaching with the grid. I have a lot of teachers that do it in a lot of different ways. I also do have teachers that do much less of it, and they'll like record video notes and things like that, like many of you are probably doing right now in this distance learning world that we are currently living in. Okay. I will tell you that I literally got flooded with emails from teachers that run this in their classroom, and they said, oh my gosh, everyone is freaking out that all their kids have to learn online now. But I'm not, because my grids are already planned, my classroom's already set up, and my students know exactly what to do. So yeah, you might have to tinker with a couple of things, but a lot of teachers are using this to organize and plan their distance learning. Even though it was developed for inside the classroom, this is a really great tool to kind of align and think through a lot of your pieces. So now let's get back to how do we manage this in the, yeah.
So when you said your science experiment,
Correct.
They do that at a certain time. You're not setting it up multiple times, you said, correct?
No, I'm not that brave. So Dina, you absolutely, what I would do was on like Wednesday, no matter where everyone was at in the grid, I'd say, we're doing this experiment today. We're setting it all up. I'm going through the instructions. I'm monitoring that you do it. We're collecting our data. We're going, basically, if you think about the scientific process, I'm going all the way up to data collection, okay? And then I'm pausing everybody and going, everyone has their data. Maybe I take a class set of data, right, Dina? A class set of data. And then when they get to that box on the grid, so let's say it's 2A on the grid, like the first box in level 2, right? Maybe when they get there, now they go back now that they have more context and they've mastered more material, and they go, now I understand what I saw in that experiment. Now I can analyze the results in a more informed way, right? It's the same thing with, if you're doing acting out plays or things like that. You have students observe, take notes, have a class discussion, document, and then when they get to it on the grid, now they're reflecting, drawing conclusions, and then really digging in deeper because they're actually ready to do it, as opposed to, I'm going to do what my partner told me to write down on this piece of paper. Oh, Josh Stock had a great question, and he says, do you have them do everything in the grid, or can they test out of portions of the grid? So I highly recommend that you pre-test before any kid starts a grid. So you should always be pre-assessing your students before they start a grid. And you could, in theory, start them ahead of other students if they already have mastery of content. So you can absolutely allow students to test out of certain things or demonstrate mastery earlier on some things based on, where things are at. So Josh, I hope that answers your question. You can let me know in the chat, but yes, absolutely, you can let students test out of portions in the grid. That's absolutely fine. So let's talk about, could you scroll up one slide real quick? Ariel, you're doing so good at this. I just want to thank you. I appreciate that. Like, amazing. Nice. So the top left two boxes here, you can see that there are these progress monitors. Now, you do not have to do this physically with magnets like is shown. You can do this digitally. You can do this on a clipboard, but you should know where every student's at in your class at all times, okay? So if a student moves from 1A to 1B, you're going to move their name or their marker or their little check mark or whatever you have. You're going to move that, okay, from 1A to 1B. So then you know where your students are at all times, okay? Progress monitoring is huge. If you're not doing this and you're trying to run this, your students will literally just take advantage of it and run amok. You have to know what's going on in your classroom so you can manage it. This is a management tool, but it's also an ownership tool. So every single student knows where they are, knows what they're supposed to be doing. Next, you'll see an organizational piece here. This is a physical aspect, obviously. This is what I call just a file bin. It's super creative name, I know. I spent all night thinking about what to call that. But this is an easy access. Now, most of you, this would be replaced by Google Classroom right now, okay? So if you have Google Classroom or Schoology or any sort of learning management software, I don't know what you guys use, you need to give your students universal access to what they need when they need it. So if I'm ready to move on to the next, I'm not waiting for you to get it to me. I can just go get it myself. It's going to save you a lot of time. For younger grades, a lot of teachers use stations and centers, okay? So they just keep everything right where the students are at, and they go, this is what station you're at today. And then when they move to that next station, it's because they showed mastery on station 1, and then they moved to station 2. So that's how it's used in some of the younger classrooms. I have another question from Sheila, and it said, would they start at a different entry point on the grid? If they pre-assess and they've already shown mastery on a part of the grid, they can start ahead. That is absolutely true, Sheila. Remember, it's not about completing tasks. It's about what do they know and what do they need. So if they already know something, they don't need to do this arbitrary task that if they've already demonstrated that they've mastered it. That doesn't mean you don't reassess. So if they showed on the pre-assessment that they know X, Y, Z, maybe have a quick conversation and make sure they actually know X, Y, and Z before skipping them ahead on the grid. But that's an absolutely great question. So I think we only have like 2 minutes. Is that correct? Yeah.
You can keep going until the next session is at 3. So you got time.
Okay. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Right.
So just so we're able to, I'm going to put I'm going to put a bit.ly link that is an exit slip on this on the chat. Is that okay? And then everyone can have access to it. Let me just grab grab the link. It was on a slide. It looked really nice before, but you know. If you guys could just fill that out like at some point, like before you leave the Zoom chat, that would be super helpful to me. I'm also going to put some of my contact information. I'd like to get into, we talked about what a grid is and sort of how we manage it. I'd really like to get into your specific questions because we're limited on time. Is that fair? So if you have specific questions, I'm going to put chad@teachbetter.com is my email. Please feel free to reach out. There's also in the chat window, I'm putting some links here. So if everyone could please fill out the exit slip. And then there's a teachbettergroup.com. So this is a group of literally thousands of educators from across the country that run this, okay? If you want to find other examples of grids, talk to other elementary teachers that do it, or high school teachers, or you want to find that teacher that does your specific thing, please go to teachbettergroup.com. There's literally like 3,500 to 4,000 teachers from across the country.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So yeah. So would you recommend, this is from Jenica Stock. Julie, you're welcome, by the way. Doing this with only ones, yes. So in an elementary classroom, I want to be really clear about this. I would never recommend that an elementary teacher goes, I'm gridding everything right now. Tomorrow, everything's on a grid. Like that would be a really bad idea because then you don't have the time to kind of wrestle with it, fix things as you go. I would start with a single subject, Jenica.
Well, this one started at 2, so I'm just popping in on the last couple minutes. It's called the, oh, sorry.
That's okay. This is the time we live in, guys. This is our world now. This is what education is now. It's not a problem at all. So Jenica, I would not recommend starting all your subjects like right off the bat. Maybe you already have a set math curriculum, so you want to try this in science or social studies in your elementary classroom. Maybe you already have set curriculums for other things, but find out where it fits for you, where you're comfortable. Most teachers I work with like it so much, they do end up doing it in other subjects, but it's not really quick. It takes time to develop and kind of do it over time. So take your time with it, start in one area, work out the kinks, and then think about doing it with other subject areas. And if you want to do that, please feel free to reach out to me. I also am on social media. I'm on Twitter and everything else at Chad Ostrowski as well. So if anyone has any more questions, I'm going to hang out here for a little bit just to make sure no one has any questions. If you need to get to another session or anything else, I absolutely respect that. Please fill out the exit slip before you leave and get my contact information as well. I truly appreciate that. So does anyone need anything else? Guys, calm down. Seriously, this is a Zoom meeting. It's hard to manage all this excitement at one time. Okay, just relax. Oh, Sheila actually just mentioned that there is, oh, thank you. Josh, I'm going to get to your question, but there is a free online course that is shared in the presentation files, which are all at that link. There's a free course. It's going to go through this introduction as well, the same introduction I just did, but maybe if there's any parts that I missed, you'll be able to catch. So Josh Stock asked, do you ever give choice in the grid? Yes, absolutely. Josh, put some choice in your grids, choice and voice. You can literally have in a box, do one of these 3 things, right? You could easily add choice, or you could say, do this box or this box to demonstrate mastery, 1A or 1B, you know, something like that. So Josh, yes, 100%, you can add choice. And if you want like examples of how to do that, or you want to talk through it, please let me know. So Ariel's already rocking this in her classroom. It sounds like she's doing some awesome things with science and social studies. She uses colored bins to kind of organize them. So Ariel, if you could real quick, do you use like stations and things like that, like while the kids are working?
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. So some of this stuff was technology. So I'd put QR codes that they could
Oh, I
scan
love it.
directly to whatever. I did some
Beautiful.
video lessons where I recorded myself teaching. And so that way they could get the lesson when they were ready for it. But what it freed me up to do as a first grade teacher is to work with the kids that couldn't read on their own or needed that intervention time or that small group attention. I could
Yeah,
pull 3 or 4 of them over and help them with the grid. Like I could help them with their tasks and give them that accommodation that they needed. Whereas normally, you know, you have to ignore them until you're done teaching and then you get to
right.
them, and then you run out of time. So
Yeah,
it was awesome. It's a lot to create. If I had a team that was on board, it would have been amazing. But and I think each year building on creating a new grid.
it will only get easier as the time goes. So Ariel had a great point here. This takes time to start. Okay, and if there's one barrier that stops most teachers from starting this, it's time. And something I will tell you though is your day-to-day life gets easier in the classroom because you already have your plan for the entire unit. I'm hoping Ariel's shaking her head right now. I think she is, because I didn't tell her I was going to say that. But your day-to-day life, most teachers tell me that like they have all their planning time back because they know what they're doing for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. It's all set. It's all ready to go. And Ariel, this is your first year doing it. Next year is going to be even easier. Like next year, your grids are done. They're developed. So I have teachers in year 2 or 3 that are just smooth sailing this. And they're focused on one thing. Who knows what they need to, and what do I need to do for the ones that don't? This is like truly where the power of this comes in. So it gets really powerful there. But yeah, absolutely. Start small, take your time. And if you want to work through a grid, please let me know. I'm more than happy. My travel schedule really cleared up over the next couple of months. Something's going on, you know, but so if you want to start working on grids, now's a really great time. If you want feedback, feel free to email them to me or share them via Google, or you know, and I can collaborate or comment on them if you'd like. That's absolutely fine. How many grids? So this is from Justin's iPhone. I'm sorry, that was just funny to me. This is from Justin. This is, how many grids would you recommend to start a main unit or a smaller one to start? So if I'm going to start this at the beginning of next year, if I'm thinking August, right? The first grid I do is not going to be content. It's going to be classroom management. The first grid I do is going to be like 2 or 3 days. It's going to be a super tiny grid, and it's going to be, how do we run in this classroom? How do we operate? What are the housekeeping things that I can put through? And through doing that, the students are going to learn what a grid is, how it works, where to get their next assignment. So it's a grid to teach them how to do the grid. Okay, so that's a really, really great way to kind of introduce this to your students with non-academic content. If you're starting in the middle of the year, it's absolutely okay, Justin, to start with a smaller grid. A really great first step is take a project you already do, break it into steps, and put that into a grid. Projects are already self-paced. Projects are already mastery-driven. So you can take that project that you have, start tracking your students through the project, breaking it up into parts, identifying your learning targets for every part of the project. That's a really easy kind of first tier effort into starting this process if you want just to kind of dip your toe in the water. If you think all the levels at one time is too much, it's absolutely also okay for you to do a single level. Maybe you do a 1-week grid and just see how it feels. See how your students do with it. I have some teachers doing it that way as well. I literally coach teachers from across the country on how to do this. We've seen some amazing results. So I'm absolutely excited that you guys are interested in this, and absolutely willing to help in any way I can. So I don't think there are any more questions. I truly want to thank you guys before you go to your next session for your time and your attention and for working with me through these technical issues, which I will figure out before next time. So please, if you have not done so already, I would truly appreciate if you would fill out the exit slip. That will also give me your emails. So I will share all the links and everything from this session in an email to anyone who filled out the exit slip as well. Okay.
Thank you so much, Chad. I appreciate it. I literally sent a message to Ray and Chad like yesterday at 3 o'clock or something like that. So I really appreciate him hopping on. It kept coming up in conversation. I was like, I wish Ray or Chad could describe this, and you did a great job. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Ariel, how did you find out about this?
I actually just stumbled upon it accidentally about 2 years ago, and I started with the free webinar thing on their website, and then I actually went to the Teach Better conference this fall, which was amazing, and it's happening again this year, right, Chad?
It is happening October 2nd and 3rd.
Yes, so
in Akron, Ohio. Yeah.
Amazing group of people. I just had a friend in Akron that I could go visit, and so I was like, hey, this works out perfect. And so
you guys are all invited to Teach Better 2020. It'll probably be the first conference that's open, actually, I hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys.